after hours tonight, we're talking about the battles nobody sees. The struggles people hide behind normal conversations and fake smiles. Because not every mental health struggle looks dramatic from the outside. Some people are completely falling apart while still showing up every day. Still going to work, still answering messages, still paying bills, still pretending everything is okay. And that's what makes invisible struggles so hard for people to understand. Because society expects pain to look obvious. People expect visible breakdowns, visible sadness. But sometimes the worst suffering is completely silent. Sometimes people become emotionally numb instead of emotional. They stop feeling excitement, stop feeling joy. Not because they want to, but because they're mentally exhausted. Some people survive so long in stress that their mind just shuts emotions down. Not happiness, not sadness, just emptiness. And the scary part is, most people around them never notice. Because they still smile sometimes, still joke around. Still function enough to look normal. That's why high-functioning depression can be so dangerous. People assume functioning means healthy. But surviving and living are not the same thing. Some people are surviving life, not experiencing it. And nobody notices because they've mastered hiding it. Some struggles don't scream for attention, they disappear quietly. Sometimes mental illness doesn't even feel emotional. Sometimes it becomes physical. Brain fog, exhaustion, memory problems. Feeling disconnected from reality. Feeling disconnected from yourself. Some people walk through life feeling like they aren't even fully here. And they don't know how to explain it to anyone else. Because how do you explain something invisible? How do you explain feeling detached from reality? How do you explain feeling empty for months? How do you explain being mentally exhausted all the time? Especially when people expect you to just be positive. A lot of people silently struggle because they fear being misunderstood, or judged, or dismissed. So instead, they carry it alone. And over time, that isolation starts changing people. Some people stop opening up completely. Some stop asking for help because they think nobody understands. Some become quiet, some become angry. And that's another thing people rarely talk about. Depression and anxiety don't always look sad. Sometimes they look like irritability, frustration, rage. Sometimes people are overwhelmed beyond what their mind can handle. And the pressure eventually explodes outward. Not because they're bad people, but because they're exhausted. Mental overload changes people. Especially when they never get time to recover emotionally. Some people are running on survival mode for years. And eventually the body starts reacting too. Shaking, freezing, panic. Sudden shutdowns where the brain just completely stops cooperating. Some people get so overwhelmed they can't even speak. Not because they don't want to, but because mentally they freeze. And people around them might never understand what happened. That's the thing about invisible struggles. Most people only understand pain they can physically see. But some of the deepest pain never leaves visible scars. Some people become experts at hiding their suffering. They learn how to smile on command, how to sound okay, how to make everybody else comfortable while silently falling apart. And eventually, that mask becomes exhausting too. Because pretending to be okay takes energy. Especially when you already feel drained just trying to survive the day. A lot of people are carrying battles nobody around them even knows about. And honestly, that should make us more compassionate. Because we truly never know what somebody else is dealing with. The quiet coworker, the angry driver, the exhausted parent, the distant friend. Some people are trying their hardest just to make it through one more day. And society can be cruel toward invisible pain. People hear things like, "You don't look depressed." Or, "Everybody gets stressed." Or, "You just need to think positive." But mental struggles are not always that simple. Some people are fighting battles inside their own mind every day. Battles nobody else can hear, nobody else can see. And when you fight invisible battles long enough, you start feeling alone. That loneliness changes people too. Some stop trusting others. Some stop trusting themselves. Some stop believing things can ever get better. That's why conversations like this matter. Because sometimes people just need to know they are not alone. Sometimes hearing someone else describe it changes everything. Because for the first time, they feel understood. Mental health conversations should go deeper than surface-level advice. Not everybody can just snap out of it. Some people are trying to untangle years of emotional survival mode. Years of stress, years of trauma. Years of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. And healing from invisible wounds takes time. A lot of time sometimes. Some days healing looks strong, some days it looks messy. Some days it looks like progress, other days it looks like survival. But surviving another day still matters. Even if nobody else understands how hard it was. And honestly, rest matters too. People push themselves so hard trying to appear normal. Trying to keep up appearances, trying not to disappoint anyone. Meanwhile, internally, they are exhausted. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is slow down. Breathe, rest, recover. Because healing isn't weakness, recovery isn't weakness. Being honest about struggling isn't weakness either. It takes courage to admit you're not okay. Especially in a world that expects people to hide their pain. A lot of people learned early on to bury what they feel. To stay quiet, to tough it out. To keep moving no matter how heavy life became. And over time, that emotional weight adds up. Stress that never gets processed doesn't just disappear. Sometimes it settles into the body, into the mind. And eventually people stop feeling like themselves completely. That's why some people describe life as feeling unreal. Like they're watching themselves instead of living. Like they're disconnected from the world around them. That kind of struggle can feel terrifying and isolating. Especially when nobody around you understands what you mean. And honestly, a lot of people suffer in silence because of that. They fear sounding crazy. They fear judgment. So instead of opening up, they hide deeper. And isolation has a way of amplifying pain. The longer people suffer alone, the heavier life starts feeling. Even simple things become exhausting. Answering messages, leaving the house. Making decisions, holding conversations. People think laziness is the problem sometimes. But sometimes exhaustion runs far deeper than people realize. Mental exhaustion can drain a person just as much as physical exhaustion. And invisible struggles often make people feel guilty for struggling at all, because they compare themselves to everybody else. They wonder why life feels harder for them, why their brain won't slow down, why they feel stuck. And that self-judgment becomes another burden to carry. That's why compassion matters so much. Not fake motivational quotes, not surface-level advice. Real compassion, real patience. Because some people are fighting battles they don't even fully understand themselves. And if you've ever struggled mentally, you know how exhausting that can be. Trying to explain emotions you can barely describe. Trying to function normally while internally overwhelmed. Trying to keep life moving while mentally exhausted. And yet, people still keep going. That resilience deserves more respect than society gives it. Because some people wake up every day and fight invisible wars silently. Wars nobody applauds, nobody notices. And still, they keep moving forward. That takes strength too, even if nobody sees it. And maybe that's something more people need to hear. Just because your struggle is invisible doesn't mean it isn't real. Just because people don't understand it doesn't make it invalid. And just because healing takes time doesn't mean healing is impossible. Sometimes progress is slow, sometimes it's messy. But even small steps forward still matter. Sometimes surviving the day is the victory. And people rarely give themselves credit for making it through hard seasons, especially when the struggle is mostly internal. Because invisible pain doesn't come with recognition. Nobody sees the mental battles behind the scenes. Nobody sees the nights spent overthinking everything. Nobody sees the emotional exhaustion people carry quietly. And yet somehow, people still expect themselves to be perfect. To always have energy, always have answers. Always stay productive, always stay strong. But nobody can carry endless pressure forever without eventually feeling the weight. And sometimes that pressure shows up in strange ways. People disconnect emotionally, people isolate themselves. People lose motivation for things they once cared about deeply. Some stop recognizing themselves entirely. That's why mental health is far more complex than people realize. Not every struggle fits neatly into a simple explanation. Some experiences are hard to describe even for the people living through them. And honestly, that can make people feel even more alone. Because when you can't explain your pain, you start hiding it. You stop trying to make people understand. You convince yourself nobody would understand anyway. And silence becomes the default. That's why these conversations matter so much. Not because one video magically fixes everything, but because sometimes understanding is the beginning of healing. Sometimes people just need to hear, you are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not alone. And maybe tonight somebody out there needs that reminder. Maybe somebody listening right now has been silently carrying too much, trying to appear okay while mentally exhausted, trying to survive quietly without burdening anyone else. And honestly, that kind of loneliness can feel crushing. Humans were never meant to carry everything alone. But modern life teaches people to hide everything. Hide weakness, hide emotion, hide pain. And eventually, people forget how to be honest about struggling. They become disconnected from themselves emotionally. Disconnected from others, disconnected from life. That emotional numbness can become terrifying over time. Because eventually people stop asking, how do I heal? And start asking, will I ever feel normal again? That's a heavy place for someone to sit mentally. Especially while trying to continue living everyday life. Still working, still showing up, still surviving. Even when internally they feel completely drained. And honestly, those people deserve compassion too. Not judgment, not dismissal, not ridicule. Because healing becomes harder when people feel ashamed for struggling. Shame keeps people silent. Shame keeps people isolated. And isolation has a way of making darkness feel permanent. That's why empathy matters more than most people realize. A little patience can change someone's entire day. A little understanding can make someone feel less alone in the world. And honestly, we need more of that right now. People are mentally exhausted, emotionally overloaded, trying to keep themselves together through constant pressure. And social media often makes it worse. Everybody looks happy online, successful online, confident online, perfect online. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, many people are struggling deeply. But nobody posts the panic attacks. Nobody posts the shutdowns. Nobody posts the nights spent feeling empty or emotionally disconnected. So people compare their private pain to everyone else's highlight reel. And that comparison quietly destroys people. Because they start believing they're the only one struggling. The only one overwhelmed, the only one mentally exhausted. When in reality, far more people are struggling than we realize. A lot of people are just hiding it well. And honestly, high-functioning suffering can be dangerous. Because people stop checking on those who appear fine. The dependable ones, the quiet, strong ones. The people who always show up even when they're exhausted. Sometimes those are the people hurting the most internally. Because they became so used to carrying pain that nobody notices anymore. And eventually, constant emotional pressure changes people. Some become detached, some become hopeless. Some stop believing they deserve help at all. That's why compassion matters so much. You never truly know what somebody else is carrying. The person next to you could be fighting invisible battles silently. Battles they've never spoken about to anyone. And maybe that's why kindness matters more than ever. Because kindness reaches people we may never fully understand. And honestly, sometimes survival itself is courageous. Some people wake up every morning already mentally exhausted, already overwhelmed, already emotionally drained. And still, they keep trying. Still trying to build a life, still trying to heal, still trying to become a better version of themselves. That effort deserves respect too. Even when progress feels slow, even when healing feels messy. Because healing is rarely a straight line forward. Some days people feel strong, other days they barely function. That doesn't erase the progress they've already made. But when people struggle mentally, and they often forget that, one hard day suddenly feels like complete failure. One shutdown, one emotional spiral. And suddenly they convince themselves they're back at the beginning again. But healing doesn't work that way. Progress can still exist even during difficult moments. And honestly, people need to give themselves more grace, especially during seasons where life feels emotionally heavy. Because mental exhaustion changes how people experience reality. It changes energy, it changes perspective. It changes motivation, it changes hope sometimes. And when someone feels mentally drained for long enough, even simple tasks can start feeling impossible. Getting out of bed, responding to people, taking care of responsibilities, making basic decisions. People from the outside may never understand how heavy that feels. Because invisible struggles don't always make sense externally. And honestly, that misunderstanding can hurt deeply. Especially when people already feel isolated. That's why supportive environments matter. Not environments where people feel judged for struggling emotionally. Not environments where people feel weak for needing help. People heal better when they feel safe enough to be honest. Safe enough to admit, I'm overwhelmed. I'm mentally exhausted. I'm struggling. Because hiding pain constantly becomes exhausting too. Pretending everything is okay becomes another burden to carry. And eventually, then some people stop recognizing themselves. They forget what peace feels like, what calm feels like, what emotional safety feels like. That's why recovery matters so much. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. People are not machines, they can't endlessly absorb stress. Eventually, the mind and body start reacting. And those reactions don't always look obvious. Sometimes they look like numbness, like withdrawal, like shutting down emotionally from pure exhaustion. And honestly, that deserves understanding too. Not every struggle looks dramatic, not every wound is visible. But invisible pain is still real pain. And people silently carrying heavy things deserve compassion too. Because everybody is carrying something the world may never fully see. Some people carry anxiety quietly, some carry grief quietly. Some carry trauma silently for years. And over time, that emotional weight changes people. Sometimes it changes how they think, how they react, how they trust, how they connect with others. That's why judging people too quickly can be dangerous. Because we often see behavior without seeing the pain behind it. We see irritability without seeing exhaustion. We see withdrawal without seeing overwhelm. We see silence without seeing emotional shutdown. And honestly, a lot of people are trying their best quietly, even when their best looks different than before. That's another painful reality people rarely talk about. Mental struggles can change a person's capacity temporarily. Things that once felt easy can suddenly feel overwhelming. And that shift can make people feel ashamed of themselves. Like they're failing somehow, like they're broken somehow. But struggling mentally does not erase someone's worth. And needing rest does not make someone weak. The human mind was never designed for nonstop pressure without recovery. Eventually, everybody reaches limits. And sometimes people don't realize how overwhelmed they are until their mind and body force them to slow down. That can look like panic, that can look like shutdown. That can look like emotional numbness or total exhaustion. And honestly, a lot of people push through pain too long because they fear disappointing others. They fear slowing down. They fear appearing weak. So they keep carrying more and more until eventually they feel crushed by it. And the scary part is, many people normalize that suffering. They convince themselves constant exhaustion is just life. That emotional numbness is normal, that burnout is normal. But surviving in constant distress should never become the standard. People deserve peace too. People deserve healing too. Even if healing takes time, even if healing feels slow. And honestly, slow progress is still progress. Some people expect healing to happen all at once. But real healing often happens quietly. Little by little, moment by moment. One better day, one honest conversation. One moment of hope during a difficult season. Sometimes those small moments matter more than people realize. Because small moments are often what keep people going. A kind conversation, a quiet moment of peace. A reminder that somebody cares. Sometimes that changes everything. Especially for people who have been carrying pain silently. Because isolation can make struggles feel endless. When people suffer alone long enough, hope starts fading. And honestly, that's why connection matters so much. Humans are not meant to carry everything alone. But modern life often pushes people toward isolation instead. Everybody stays busy, everybody keeps moving. And sometimes people silently disappear inside themselves. Still physically present, but emotionally exhausted. Still functioning externally, but struggling internally. That's why invisible struggles can feel so lonely. Because from the outside, everything appears normal. Meanwhile, internally, someone may feel completely overwhelmed. That disconnect between appearance and reality can become exhausting to maintain, especially when people feel pressure to always appear okay. Pressure to always stay productive, always stay positive. Even during seasons where mentally they are struggling deeply. And honestly, people deserve space to be human. Space to rest, space to recover. Space to admit when life feels overwhelming. Because bottling everything up eventually has consequences. Stress doesn't just vanish because people ignore it. Pain doesn't disappear just because someone hides it well. Eventually, unresolved pressure starts affecting the mind and body. And sometimes people don't even realize how much they've been carrying until they suddenly reach a breaking point. That breaking point can look different for everyone. For some people, it looks like panic. For others, it looks like numbness. For some, it looks like anger. For others, complete shutdown. That's why mental struggles should never be reduced to stereotypes. Not everybody experiences pain the same way. Not everybody reacts to stress the same way either. Some people cry, some people go silent. Some people isolate, some people become irritable. Some people continue functioning normally while quietly falling apart inside. And honestly, those invisible battles deserve compassion too. Not judgment, not shame, not ridicule. People already carry enough internally without feeling attacked for struggling. That's why empathy matters so much in this world. Because kindness reaches people whose battles we may never fully understand. And sometimes, understanding can help someone keep going, even during the darkest seasons of their life. And honestly, some people are still here today because of that. Because someone listened, someone cared. Someone treated them like a human being instead of a problem. And that kind of compassion can save lives quietly. A lot of healing starts with simply feeling understood. Feeling seen, feeling heard. Feeling like your struggles actually matter to somebody. Because invisible pain often makes people feel emotionally invisible too. Like nobody notices their exhaustion, nobody notices their effort. Nobody notices how hard they're fighting just to keep going. And honestly, that can become incredibly lonely. Especially when someone has spent years pretending they're okay. At some point, people start forgetting what honesty feels like. They become so used to masking pain that the mask becomes automatic. Smile when expected, say, "I'm fine." Keep functioning, keep surviving. Even when internally they feel completely drained. That kind of emotional survival mode changes people over time. It changes how safe they feel emotionally. It changes how willing they are to trust others. Some people stop opening up completely because they fear being misunderstood. Others stop talking because they feel like nobody listens anyway. And honestly, that emotional isolation can become dangerous. Because humans need connection, humans need support. Nobody is built to endlessly carry pain without somewhere safe to release it. That's why emotional honesty matters. Not performative honesty online, not fake vulnerability. Real honesty, real human conversations. The kind where people admit they're struggling sometimes. The kind where people stop pretending they have life completely figured out. Because honestly, nobody has it all figured out. Everybody is learning, everybody is carrying something. And everybody reaches difficult seasons at some point. That's part of being human, not failure, not weakness. And honestly, people need to stop punishing themselves for struggling. Mental health is not a competition. Pain does not become invalid because someone else has it worse. Struggles still matter, exhaustion still matters. And invisible suffering still deserves compassion. Because honestly, some people are fighting battles every day quietly. battles that take enormous strength just to survive. And yet nobody sees the effort behind that survival. Nobody sees how hard it was just to get through the day. That's why people need to give themselves more grace sometimes. More patience, more understanding. Because healing rarely happens through self-hatred. People heal better when they feel safe, when they feel supported. When they feel like they're allowed to be human again. And honestly, the world needs more of that right now. More empathy, more compassion, more patience. Because invisible battles are everywhere around us. Even if we never fully see them. And maybe that realization alone should make us kinder to each other. Because every person we pass could be carrying unseen pain. Pain hidden behind routines, behind responsibilities. Behind smiles, behind silence. And honestly, a lot of people become masters at hiding it. Not because they want attention, but because they fear judgment. Fear being misunderstood, fear becoming a burden. So instead, they carry everything internally. And over time, that emotional pressure starts reshaping their entire life. How they think, how they trust, how they connect. Some people slowly become emotionally distant without even realizing it. Others become hyper-alert constantly, always mentally tense. Always expecting something bad to happen. That kind of mental exhaustion can drain joy out of life quietly. People stop enjoying things fully, stop feeling present fully. Sometimes they stop recognizing themselves completely. And honestly, that experience can feel terrifying. Especially when nobody around them understands what they're experiencing. That's why mental health conversations need more depth. Not just be positive, not just try harder. Because invisible struggles are often far more complicated than that. People can be deeply grateful for life and still struggling mentally. People can love others deeply and still feel emotionally numb sometimes. People can appear successful externally while internally exhausted. And honestly, that contradiction confuses a lot of people. Because they think struggling means they're failing somehow. But struggling mentally does not erase someone's value. It does not erase their goodness, their strength, their potential. And honestly, people need reminders of that sometimes. Especially during seasons where hope feels distant. Because difficult seasons can distort perspective. People start believing the pain will last forever. That the numbness will never lift, that peace will never return. But emotions are not permanent states. Healing is possible, growth is possible. Even if progress happens slowly and quietly. And honestly, quiet progress still matters deeply. Sometimes the biggest victories are invisible too. Getting through another day, choosing not to quit. Choosing to keep trying despite emotional exhaustion. That resilience matters more than most people realize. Especially in a world where so many people are silently overwhelmed. And honestly, sometimes surviving is the brave thing. Even when nobody else sees how hard the battle really is. Because invisible struggles are still real struggles. Even when they leave no visible scars. Even when nobody else understands them fully. And honestly, people carrying those struggles deserve compassion too. Because nobody should have to feel ashamed for being human. Nobody should feel weak for needing support sometimes. Life becomes heavy for everybody eventually. And honestly, some people have been carrying heavy things for years. Things they've never spoken about openly, things they've never processed fully. And eventually that emotional pressure starts leaking into everyday life. Into relationships, into sleep, into focus, into motivation, into emotional stability. That's why mental health struggles are never just in someone's head. The mind affects the body affects the mind. Stress changes people physically, emotionally, mentally. And honestly, many people underestimate how powerful chronic stress becomes, especially when someone never feels safe enough to truly relax emotionally. Some people live in survival mode for so long that survival mode starts feeling normal. Constant tension, constant overthinking, constant emotional exhaustion that never fully goes away. And honestly, that kind of invisible suffering can feel endless, especially when people feel pressure to continue functioning normally. Still working, still producing, still smiling, even when internally they feel completely burned out. That disconnect between external appearance and internal reality can become emotionally exhausting by itself. And honestly, a lot of people are tired of pretending. Tired of hiding pain, tired of masking exhaustion. Tired of acting okay because they think they have to. That's why authenticity matters so much. Not perfection, not appearances, not performance. Real honesty, real humanity. Because people heal better when they stop fighting themselves constantly. When they stop treating themselves like machines instead of humans. Humans need rest. Humans need connection. Humans need moments of peace to emotionally recover. And honestly, a lot of people haven't truly rested in years. Not mentally, not emotionally. Their body may stop moving, but their mind never slows down. Constant thoughts, constant pressure, constant worry. That kind of mental overload changes people quietly over time. It changes energy levels, it changes emotional stability. It changes how hopeful people feel about the future sometimes. And honestly, people deserve more compassion for that. Because invisible battles are still exhausting battles. Even when nobody else can fully see them. Even when people hide them behind a smile every day. And honestly, some smiles are survival mechanisms. Some laughter hides exhaustion, some humor hides pain. A lot of people become incredibly skilled at hiding what they truly feel, because somewhere along the way, they learned they had to. Maybe they were ignored, maybe they were judged. Maybe they opened up once and regretted it afterward. So eventually they stopped talking, stopped explaining, and silently carried everything alone instead. That loneliness changes people quietly. People begin feeling emotionally distant even around others. They stop feeling fully connected to life itself sometimes. And honestly, that emotional numbness can feel terrifying. Especially when someone remembers what happiness used to feel like. What peace used to feel like, what calm used to feel like. That contrast between before and now can become painful. Because people start wondering if they'll ever feel normal again. And honestly, that question carries enormous weight mentally, especially for people silently struggling while still trying to function daily, still handling responsibilities, still showing up for others, even while internally they feel emotionally exhausted. That's why invisible struggles deserve real compassion. Not shallow understanding, not surface-level advice. Real patience, real empathy. Because healing is difficult enough already without people feeling judged for struggling. And honestly, judgment pushes people deeper into silence, deeper into isolation, deeper into emotional shutdown. That's why safe conversations matter so much. Conversations where people don't feel attacked for being vulnerable. Conversations where people can admit, I'm not okay right now. Without fear of ridicule, without fear of rejection. Because honestly, many people have spent years hiding emotionally. Years pretending everything was fine when internally it wasn't. And eventually, that emotional suppression catches up with people. The mind and body can only absorb so much pressure before reacting. That reaction may look like burnout. It may look like panic. It may look like numbness or complete emotional exhaustion. And honestly, those reactions are not moral failures. They are signs that someone has been overwhelmed for too long. That's why rest matters, support matters. Emotional safety matters more than most people realize. Because people heal better when they stop feeling alone. When they stop feeling ashamed for struggling internally. And honestly, nobody should feel ashamed for being human. Nobody should feel weak for carrying invisible pain. Because invisible battles are still real battles. Even when the world never fully sees them. Even when people suffer through them silently every day. And honestly, some people are far stronger than they realize. Because surviving difficult seasons takes strength people rarely acknowledge. Especially when someone is carrying pain nobody else can see. Waking up exhausted, thinking constantly. Trying to function normally while mentally overwhelmed. That kind of invisible battle can drain a person completely. And honestly, many people feel guilty for struggling at all. They tell themselves other people have it worse. Or I should be stronger than this. But pain is not a competition. Exhaustion is not weakness. And invisible suffering does not become fake just because it's hidden. Some people are carrying years of emotional pressure internally. Years of stress, years of overthinking. Years of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. Eventually, that pressure changes people deeply. Some become emotionally detached, some become hopeless. Some stop recognizing themselves entirely. And honestly, that experience can feel terrifying internally. Especially when nobody around them understands what they're going through. That's why mental health conversations need more honesty. More depth, more compassion. Because a lot of suffering happens quietly behind closed doors. Behind work schedules, behind routines. Behind normal conversations where people say, I'm fine. Even when internally they feel emotionally exhausted. And honestly, sometimes people don't even realize how exhausted they are. Because survival mode becomes normal to them. Constant pressure becomes normal. Constant stress becomes normal. And eventually, they forget what peace feels like. what emotional safety feels like, what calm feels like. That's why recovery matters so much. Not just physical recovery, but emotional recovery too. Humans cannot endlessly absorb pressure without consequences. Eventually, the mind and body begin reacting automatically. That reaction may look different for everybody. For some, it looks like panic. For others, complete shutdown. For some, it looks like emotional numbness. For others, constant irritability. That's why people need to stop assuming all suffering looks the same. Invisible struggles are complicated, deeply personal sometimes. And honestly, many people are fighting those battles silently every day. Still showing up, still trying, still surviving. Even when mentally they feel completely drained. That resilience deserves recognition too. Because surviving difficult seasons takes real strength internally. Even when nobody else notices how hard the battle truly is. And honestly, a lot of people are tired of carrying everything alone. Tired of pretending they're okay, tired of masking exhaustion. Tired of feeling emotionally disconnected from themselves and others. That kind of loneliness can slowly wear people down internally. Especially when they feel like nobody truly understands them. That's why compassion matters so much. Not fake positivity, not shallow advice. Real empathy, real patience. Because people heal better when they feel emotionally safe. When they feel heard instead of judged, supported instead of dismissed. And honestly, that emotional safety can change lives quietly. Some people have spent years believing their struggles make them weak. Years believing they need to just push through it. But humans are not machines. People eventually reach limits emotionally. And honestly, reaching a limit does not make someone broken. It makes them human. It makes them overwhelmed. That's an important difference people need to remember. Because shame keeps people trapped inside silent suffering. Shame tells people they should hide what they feel. That they should suffer quietly. That they should never need help. And honestly, that mindset destroys people slowly. Humans need support. Humans need connection. Humans need spaces where they can be honest about struggling sometimes. Because pretending constantly becomes exhausting by itself. Always acting okay, always masking pain. Always trying to appear strong even while emotionally exhausted. That pressure can slowly disconnect people from themselves internally. Some stop recognizing their emotions entirely. Others stop trusting their own thoughts, their own feelings. And honestly, that confusion can become overwhelming mentally. Especially when someone already feels isolated. That's why understanding matters so much. Not everybody experiences pain the same way. Not everybody reacts to stress the same way either. Some people become emotional, others become numb. Some people become quiet, others become irritable. And honestly, none of those reactions automatically make someone bad. Sometimes they are signs of deep internal exhaustion. Signs that someone has been carrying too much pressure for too long. That's why people deserve compassion during difficult seasons. Because invisible struggles can become incredibly heavy internally, even when the world never fully sees them. Even when someone continues functioning normally through the pain. And honestly, sometimes that hidden resilience is extraordinary. Because some people are surviving battles that would break others completely. And yet, they still wake up and keep trying. Still trying to heal, still trying to improve. Still trying to become a better version of themselves. That effort matters more than most people realize. Especially during seasons where life feels emotionally heavy. Because difficult seasons distort perspective. People start believing they'll always feel this way. That peace will never return, that healing will never happen. But emotions are temporary, even painful ones. And honestly, healing often happens more quietly than people expect. Not all at once, not in dramatic moments. Sometimes healing happens through tiny moments of progress. One calmer day, one deeper breath. One moment where life feels slightly lighter than before. And honestly, those moments matter deeply. Because small moments of hope keep people moving forward. Even during difficult seasons where everything feels emotionally dark. That's why people should never underestimate the impact of kindness. A kind conversation, a moment of patience. A reminder that somebody cares. Sometimes that changes everything. Especially for people silently struggling with invisible pain. Because isolation convinces people they are alone in their suffering. It convinces people nobody could possibly understand them. And honestly, that loneliness can become crushing internally. That's why genuine connection matters so much. Not fake connection, not social media performance. Real human connection, real empathy. Because people heal better when they stop feeling emotionally alone. When they stop believing they must carry everything silently forever. And honestly, nobody should have to carry invisible pain alone. Not anxiety, not depression, not emotional exhaustion. Not the feeling of being mentally overwhelmed by life constantly. Humans need support during difficult seasons. Humans need understanding, humans need patience. And honestly, the world could use a lot more compassion right now. Because invisible battles exist everywhere around us. Behind work uniforms, behind routines. Behind normal conversations where people quietly say, "I'm okay," even when internally they are emotionally exhausted. That's why empathy matters more than people realize. Because kindness reaches people whose struggles may never become visible. And honestly, sometimes that kindness helps people survive. Even during the darkest seasons of their life. And maybe tonight, somebody listening needed this reminder. That invisible struggles are real, that healing is possible. And that they are not weak for fighting silent battles internally. Because honestly, surviving invisible pain takes real strength. Especially when someone keeps fighting without recognition or understanding. Still showing up, still trying to move forward. Even while carrying emotional exhaustion that nobody else can fully see. That kind of resilience deserves respect. Because honestly, invisible battles can become incredibly heavy internally. Heavy enough to affect thoughts, heavy enough to affect hope. Heavy enough to make life feel overwhelming in ways difficult to explain. And honestly, that confusion can make people feel isolated too. Because when someone struggles internally in ways they cannot fully describe, they often stop trying to explain it altogether. And silence slowly becomes their emotional survival mechanism. But humans were never meant to survive life completely alone. People need support. People need understanding. People need reminders that struggling does not make them broken. Because honestly, everybody reaches difficult seasons eventually. Seasons where life feels emotionally heavy, mentally exhausting. Seasons where even simple tasks can feel overwhelming internally. That doesn't make someone weak, it makes them human. And honestly, people deserve more compassion during those seasons. More patience, more understanding. Less judgment, less emotional shame. Because shame keeps people trapped inside silent suffering. It convinces people they must hide what they feel. That they must struggle privately forever without support. And honestly, that mindset slowly destroys people internally. Humans need emotional connection. Humans need safe spaces. Places where they can be honest without fear of rejection. Because healing happens easier when people stop feeling emotionally alone. When they stop believing their pain makes them weak somehow. And honestly, invisible pain is still real pain. Even if nobody else fully understands it, even if nobody else can see it. Because emotional wounds do not need visibility to exist. And honestly, many people carry emotional wounds silently for years. Still functioning externally, still surviving daily life. Even while internally they feel overwhelmed and exhausted. That hidden resilience deserves recognition too. Because surviving difficult mental seasons takes enormous strength internally. Even when progress feels slow, even when healing feels messy. And honestly, messy healing is still healing. Progress does not need to look perfect to still matter deeply. Sometimes progress simply means continuing to try another day. Continuing to fight quietly despite emotional exhaustion. And honestly, that quiet perseverance can be incredibly powerful. Even when nobody else fully sees the battle happening internally. Because some of the strongest people are fighting battles silently every day. Battles against anxiety, against hopelessness, against emotional exhaustion that never fully seems to disappear. And honestly, those battles can become incredibly isolating internally, especially when someone feels pressure to keep functioning normally through it all. Still working, still smiling, still surviving. Even when internally they feel emotionally overwhelmed. That disconnect between appearance and reality can become exhausting emotionally. And honestly, a lot of people are tired of pretending. Tired of hiding pain, tired of masking exhaustion. Tired of feeling emotionally disconnected while trying to continue everyday life. That's why authenticity matters so much. Not perfection, not performance, not appearances. Real honesty, real human connection. Because healing becomes easier when people stop feeling alone internally. When they stop believing their struggles make them weak somehow. And honestly, struggling mentally does not erase someone's worth. It does not erase their strength, their value, their potential. People can be struggling deeply internally and still deserve compassion, still deserve patience, still deserve understanding. Because invisible pain is still real pain. Even when the world never fully sees it, even when people hide it behind a smile. And honestly, many people are hiding far more than others realize. Hidden grief, hidden fear, hidden exhaustion. Hidden battles they've never spoken about to anyone openly. That's why kindness matters more than most people realize. Because kindness reaches people whose struggles remain invisible externally. A patient conversation, a moment of understanding. A reminder that somebody cares. Sometimes that changes everything internally, especially for someone silently struggling through emotional exhaustion. Because isolation convinces people they must carry everything alone forever. And honestly, that loneliness can become emotionally crushing. Humans were never designed to survive completely alone emotionally. People need support. People need connection. People need spaces where they can be honest about struggling without shame. Because shame keeps people trapped inside invisible suffering. It convinces people their pain makes them weak somehow. But honestly, surviving invisible pain takes enormous strength internally, especially when someone continues showing up despite emotional exhaustion. Still trying, still healing, still fighting quietly. Even when progress feels slow, even when life feels emotionally heavy, because honestly, the slow progress is still progress. And difficult seasons do not last forever. Healing is possible, peace is possible. Even if the journey toward it happens slowly and quietly. And honestly, quiet healing still matters deeply. Even when nobody else fully sees the growth happening internally. Because invisible progress is still real progress. And honestly, sometimes the biggest victories are invisible ones. Getting through another difficult day, choosing not to give up. Choosing to keep trying even while emotionally exhausted. That quiet perseverance deserves more recognition than it gets. Because invisible struggles can drain people in ways difficult to explain. Mentally, emotionally, physically sometimes. And honestly, a lot of people are carrying far more than others realize. Far more fear, far more stress. Far more emotional exhaustion than they ever openly admit. That's why empathy matters so much in this world. Because kindness reaches people whose battles remain hidden externally. And honestly, sometimes kindness keeps people going. Sometimes understanding keeps people from giving up completely. Especially during seasons where life feels emotionally dark. That's why real human connection matters. Not perfection, not appearances, not social performance. Real conversations, real honesty, real compassion. Because healing happens easier when people stop feeling emotionally alone. When they stop believing their invisible struggles make them weak. And honestly, struggling does not erase someone's humanity. It does not erase their goodness, their worth, their future. People can be overwhelmed internally and still deserve hope. Still deserve patience, still deserve compassion. Because honestly, everybody reaches difficult seasons eventually. Seasons where life feels heavy, where emotions feel overwhelming. Seasons where people quietly question whether things will ever improve. But difficult seasons are not permanent destinations. Healing can happen, growth can happen. Even if progress feels slow and invisible sometimes. And honestly, invisible progress still matters deeply. One calmer moment, one hopeful thought. One day where life feels slightly lighter than before. Those moments matter more than people realize. Because small moments of peace can slowly rebuild a person internally. Slowly restore hope, slowly restore emotional safety. And honestly, hope matters during dark seasons. Even small amounts of hope can keep people moving forward. Keep people trying, keep people surviving. And honestly, sometimes surviving is the brave thing. Especially when someone is carrying invisible pain silently every day. Still fighting, still healing, still trying. Even while emotionally exhausted internally. That hidden resilience deserves respect too. Because honestly, invisible battles are still real battles, even when nobody else fully understands them. Even when the world never fully sees the struggle. And honestly, people fighting those battles deserve compassion too. Because being human was never meant to be survived alone. And maybe that's something more people need to remember. That everybody is carrying something internally. Some carry grief, some carry fear. Some carry emotional exhaustion they've hidden for years. And honestly, many people are struggling more than they let others see. Because survival mode teaches people to hide pain instead of express it. To stay quiet, to keep functioning. Even when internally they feel completely overwhelmed emotionally. That's why compassion matters so much in everyday life. A little patience, a little empathy. A reminder that someone is not alone. Sometimes that changes everything. Especially for someone silently carrying invisible pain internally. Because isolation can make people feel like nobody could ever understand them. And honestly, that loneliness can become emotionally crushing. Humans need connection, humans need emotional safety. Humans need places where they can be honest without shame or fear. Because shame keeps people trapped inside invisible suffering. It convinces people they must carry everything silently forever. But honestly, nobody should have to suffer alone internally. Not anxiety, not depression, not emotional numbness. Not the feeling of being mentally exhausted all the time. People deserve support during difficult seasons. People deserve patience while healing, patience while recovering. Because honestly, healing rarely happens instantly. Sometimes healing is slow, quiet, messy. Sometimes progress is almost invisible for a while. But invisible progress is still real progress. One calmer day, one healthier thought. One moment where someone feels slightly less overwhelmed than before. Those moments matter deeply internally. Because hope rebuilds people slowly sometimes. Peace rebuilds people slowly. Safety rebuilds people slowly. And honestly, that slow rebuilding still deserves respect. Especially for people who continue fighting through emotional exhaustion every day. Still showing up, still surviving, still trying. Even while carrying invisible struggles internally. That hidden strength is extraordinary sometimes. Because honestly, continuing to fight through darkness takes courage. Continuing to hope takes courage too. Especially after difficult seasons that emotionally changed someone deeply. But difficult seasons do not erase the possibility of healing. They do not erase the possibility of peace or happiness returning someday. And honestly, people deserve reminders of that sometimes. Especially during nights where life feels emotionally overwhelming. Because invisible struggles can make people forget how strong they truly are. Forget how much they've already survived internally. And honestly, surviving difficult mental seasons takes real strength. Even when nobody else fully sees the battle happening inside. And maybe tonight, someone listening needed to hear that. Needed the reminder that struggling does not make them weak. That emotional exhaustion does not erase their value as a person. Because honestly, people are far more than the pain they carry. far more than their anxiety, far more than their darkest moments. And honestly, healing remains possible even after difficult seasons. Even after years of emotional exhaustion, years of survival mode. Because humans are resilient in ways they sometimes forget. People survive incredible things internally. Things nobody else ever fully sees, things nobody else fully understands. And honestly, that hidden resilience deserves compassion too. Not shame, not ridicule, not judgment. Because people heal better when they stop feeling emotionally attacked. When they stop believing their invisible struggles make them broken somehow. And honestly, being overwhelmed does not make someone broken. Being exhausted does not make someone weak. Being human means eventually reaching limits sometimes. That's why rest matters, recovery matters. Emotional safety matters more than most people realize. Because people heal better when they stop carrying everything alone. When they feel understood instead of dismissed, supported instead of judged. And honestly, the world needs more empathy right now. More patience for invisible battles, more compassion for hidden struggles. Because every person we pass could be carrying silent pain internally. Pain hidden behind routines, behind work, behind smiles. And honestly, a little kindness can matter more than we realize. A little understanding, a little patience. A reminder that someone is not alone during difficult seasons. Sometimes that reminder changes everything internally. Because hope matters, connection matters. And honestly, humans heal better together than alone. That doesn't mean healing is easy or quick or perfect. Sometimes healing feels messy, slow, emotionally exhausting. But honestly, slow healing is still healing. Quiet progress is still progress. Invisible growth is still growth. And difficult seasons do not last forever. Peace can return, hope can return. Even after seasons that emotionally change someone deeply. And honestly, people deserve the chance to heal fully. To rest fully, to feel safe again emotionally. Because invisible struggles are still real struggles. And honestly, people fighting those battles deserve compassion too. Especially when they continue showing up despite emotional exhaustion. Still surviving, still healing, still trying. Even during nights where life feels overwhelmingly heavy internally. Because honestly, continuing to fight through darkness takes courage. And sometimes that quiet courage is extraordinary. Even if nobody else fully sees it. Even if nobody else understands it. Because invisible battles are often fought completely in silence. Inside thoughts, inside emotions, inside exhaustion. And honestly, that kind of silent suffering can feel endless sometimes. Especially during nights where life feels emotionally overwhelming. But honestly, dark seasons do not last forever. Healing is possible, peace is possible. Even if progress happens slowly, even if healing feels messy. Because slow healing is still healing. Invisible growth is still real growth. And honestly, people fighting invisible battles deserve credit for surviving, for continuing to show up, continuing to try. Continuing to fight through emotional exhaustion without giving up completely. Because honestly, it takes real courage internally. Especially when nobody else fully sees the battle happening inside. And maybe that's why empathy matters so much. Because every person we pass could be carrying hidden pain. hidden grief, hidden fear, hidden exhaustion. Battles they've never spoken about openly to anyone. That's why kindness matters, patience matters. And honestly, real human connection matters more than ever. Because humans heal better together than they do completely alone. People need support. People need understanding. People need reminders that struggling does not make them weak. And honestly, being overwhelmed does not erase someone's value. It does not erase their future, their goodness, their potential. Because people are far more than the pain they carry internally. And honestly, people deserve the chance to heal fully. To feel peace again, to feel emotionally safe again. Even after difficult seasons that change them deeply. Because difficult seasons do not define a person forever. Healing can happen, growth can happen. Even if the journey toward it happens quietly and slowly. And honestly, quiet healing still matters deeply. Invisible progress is still real progress. Even when nobody else fully sees the growth happening internally. Because some of the most important battles people fight are the ones nobody else ever truly witnesses. And honestly, those battles deserve compassion too. So if you're carrying invisible struggles tonight, keep going, keep healing, keep fighting. Because honestly, surviving difficult seasons takes real strength. And maybe you're stronger than you realize right now. Even if the battle feels heavy, even if the road feels dark. You've already survived every difficult day that brought you here. And honestly, that resilience matters more than you know. Take care of yourselves out there tonight. Give yourselves patience during difficult seasons. Give yourselves compassion while healing slowly. Because honestly, you deserve kindness from yourselves too. Not just from the world around you, but internally too. Healing becomes harder when people constantly attack themselves mentally. When every difficult moment turns into self-hatred or shame. But honestly, being overwhelmed does not make someone weak. Being emotionally exhausted does not make someone broken. It makes them human. It makes them tired. And honestly, humans need rest sometimes. Humans need support. Humans need emotional recovery. Because life can become incredibly heavy internally without people realizing it. Stress builds quietly. Exhaustion builds quietly. And honestly, many people don't realize how overwhelmed they are. Until their mind and body finally force them to slow down. That's why emotional recovery matters so much. Not just productivity, not just constantly pushing forward. Because humans cannot endlessly operate in survival mode forever. Eventually, something inside begins asking for rest. For peace, for emotional safety. And honestly, people deserve the opportunity to heal fully. To feel calm again, to feel hopeful again. Even after difficult seasons that emotionally change them deeply. Because difficult seasons do not erase someone's future. They do not erase someone's value or potential. And honestly, many people are far stronger than they realize. Because surviving invisible battles takes enormous courage internally. Especially when someone keeps fighting despite emotional exhaustion. Still trying, still surviving, still healing. Even while carrying pain nobody else fully understands. And honestly, that quiet resilience deserves respect too. Because some of the strongest people fight their hardest battles silently. No applause, no recognition, no understanding. Just quiet perseverance through emotionally difficult seasons. And honestly, that perseverance matters deeply. So if tonight has been heavy for you, keep going. If this season has exhausted you, keep healing. And if invisible battles have made you feel alone lately, just know you are not the only one fighting quietly. A lot more people understand than you probably realize. And honestly, you deserve compassion while healing too. Because invisible struggles are still real struggles. Even when nobody else fully sees them, even when nobody else understands them. And honestly, continuing to fight through them takes courage. Real courage, quiet courage. The kind of courage that often goes completely unnoticed. But honestly, unnoticed courage is still real courage. Even if nobody applauds it, even if nobody recognizes it. Because some people are fighting invisible wars every single day internally. Wars against fear, against hopelessness, against emotional exhaustion that quietly drains their energy and peace. And honestly, continuing to fight through that takes strength. Real strength, quiet strength. The kind of strength people rarely talk about openly. Because invisible struggles rarely look dramatic externally. Sometimes they just look like someone quietly surviving another day. Still going to work, still handling responsibilities. Still trying to keep life moving forward despite emotional exhaustion internally. And honestly, that resilience deserves compassion too. Because everybody reaches difficult seasons eventually. Seasons where life feels heavy, seasons where hope feels distant. Seasons where people quietly wonder how much more they can carry emotionally. But honestly, difficult seasons do not last forever. Healing is possible, peace is possible. Even if progress happens slowly, even if healing feels invisible sometimes. Because invisible healing is still real healing. And honestly, people deserve patience while rebuilding themselves. Patience while recovering emotionally. Patience while learning to feel safe again. Because healing from invisible struggles takes time sometimes. And honestly, that time does not make someone weak. It makes them human. It makes them healing. So wherever you are tonight, keep going. Keep healing. Keep fighting quietly if you have to. Because honestly, you may be stronger than you realize right now. Even if the road feels dark, even if the season feels heavy. You've already survived every difficult day that brought you here. And honestly, that resilience matters more than you know. Take care of yourselves out there tonight, and I'll catch you on the next ride.